JD.
Gray Dawson, we are live. We're going to talk a little bit about Table Rock, a little bit about our winners, and go from there, man. How are you, dude?
I'm good, man. I just got back from Sam's Club. And as you know, Sam's Club takes a level of maturity to be able to actually go into Sam's Club and like shop like an adult. Because usually I go into Sam's Club and I'll go down the clothes aisle, then I'll go over here. I'll be like, man, that looks cool. But I literally only went in there and spent like $90, which is really good for me. And I tell you what I did is I had Chat GPT actually write me up a grocery list. I just said, Chat GPT, I struggle with going into a grocery store. I get overwhelmed. I don't want to go into Sam's Club. I live alone. I even put the fact that I have top dentures and the food that I need to eat basically needs to be, I said I like to snack on stuff late at night, and I need something that's going to be gum friendly. So maybe that's a little TMI, but who cares? But yeah, it actually shot me out a good list, and I was able to go in there and execute. So
I realize that I've gained a certain age, and maybe not as old as some of the other guests that we're gonna have on tonight, but when you start buying clothes at Sam's Club, you've reached adulthood, because they do have some secret clothes. But speaking of grocery stores and all this, I can't thank Performance Services Group enough. They killed it this weekend. Huge shout out to Michael Bubid and Jimmy Daniels. They're actually owners of that. Patrick Bowman, thank you so much for sharing your daughter's memorial with us. Not only that, but cooking us some amazing food. It's awesome. I can't wait to see what this event turns into. I don't know. It was crazy. If you guys didn't come to awards, if you didn't come to check in, you missed out. That's for sure.
yeah, I've had some people reach out to me since then and be like, hey, can we donate something to this? So, next year it's even going to be more. But speaking of just Performance Food Group, I kind of did a little deep dive because I wanted to kind of see what they were about, kind of what some stuff they did. And I'm telling you that our event, which was amazing. I mean, this group does stuff basically all over the United States that even touches kind of all over the world, from hurricane responses. They were huge in the COVID-19 support as far as just providing food for people that couldn't get out of their houses. Food bank contributions, associates in Georgia, all over the East Coast, West Coast. It just goes on and on. Charitable giving planning. And it just showcases PFG's just their dedication to supporting people just all over. So having them part of what we did, and them allowing us to be part of them for that moment, was something really cool, and excited to have them back next year. So.
For sure. They knocked it out of the park. It was really cool to see. And like I said, I can't wait, for next year to see what all happens. But let's jump into it. Let's get Mr. Jared Fosnow and Mr. Ted Davison in here. Talk to them about Table Rock and how they did. Of course, Jared, congrats on your win, man. Sounds like you're staying hot right now.
Yeah, pretty hard to believe I did it again. So
that's really cool.
Fun for me.
I believe it.
Yeah.
So Jared, when you launched that morning, and you were getting to your spot, you had 20 minutes maybe till lines in. Like, what is mentally, like, what's going through your mind? Do you already have a place where you're going to start? Does that change on that morning of? Like, how do you prep yourself for that 20 minutes before that first cast?
It just kind of depends on where I'm at and how many people show up there. So I only had one other angler there, and he's one of us four. I usually never see anybody in that area pre-fishing or in a tournament, but it was kind of cool to actually have somebody around in case something would happen, and he offered help if I did need anything too, which is cool. I actually had my place I was going to start, and it was about 20 minutes from the boat ramp to get to it. So I took the first 8 to 10 minutes and I pulled up on the main lake point in the little creek or pocket that the ramp was in. And I just did some scanning over the top of the brush piles, and I didn't really see any suspended fish So then I immediately left and headed the same direction as Jonathan and went into the next big creek where I'd planned to fish.
Awesome. What determines? I got one more question for you. What determines if you? Because I was thinking, I was like, Trey, I wanted to start out with a buzz bait, some type of topwater, or, and hit all this area, and then I'm like, well, what if a dude comes behind me and he hits it all with a jig? Like, how do I balance that out to where, okay, I want to see if there's a topwater bite through this whole section before maybe if I do have 4 or 5 other guys that are in this area, like I know you can't throw a jig and a buzz bait at the same time. But maybe you can. But how do you balance that? Like, do you just do short runs and go back through with the jig? Like what determines that? When do you switch, or how do you start?
Mine, it kind of comes down to if I pre-fished enough, and I knew from the 2 days prior pre-fishing about 4 hours each day, or 4.5 on Thursday and about 4 on Friday, that unless I seen the shad spawn going on, I wasn't going to throw topwater at all. And I just didn't. I got into them Friday on a main lake point and caught some fish, but where I was at on tournament day and on Thursday, I never got a bite on topwater. But I did have 2 topwater rods in the boat just in case.
Yeah, that area we're at, I saw, like, I got into one dock, and where we were at, there wasn't a bunch of docks. So I that's where I took off first, because I was looking for some docks, because there wasn't a lot, and I figured there'd be some sort of shad spawn in that area. I found one that it looked like they were spawning on, but there wasn't like a lot of bass there either. So it definitely wasn't, playing for that topwater bite like you talked about.
Yeah.
It seemed like you did a lot of or similar stuff to what you did at Truman, just a lot of flipping and pitching and
I kind of did. So I found that bite pretty early on Thursday when I got to the water about 10:30, and by noon I kind of had it figured out on what I needed to do. So then I just covered water, a lot of water, and marking waypoints on shade, basically the big slab rock that created shade with angles. I mean, there was fish in almost every one of those little shade pockets. But on tournament day, what got me is I caught fish flipping laydowns one of them was in a big tree, and I really wasn't expecting that. And that was 2 of my better 3 fish was doing that. But yeah, the numbers was. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. The numbers what?
Oh, the numbers was definitely fishing that shade in those little bitty cracks and little bitty areas. I could flip a Ned or an Eco in there and just get bit almost immediately. It would be swimming off before it even got to the bottom.
I was gonna say, Chad, did you find a similar bite, or what was your bite tournament day?
I feel like I was doing something different. So the fish that I found were primarily on mixed rock gravel banks. So these would be like your typical spawning areas. I don't know. I feel like some of them may have been late spawners or possibly some fry garters. There was a little bit of a shad spawn deal going on. And then even after the shad spawn deal died, all day long you would see like just little shore minnows like flipping on the surface, and I would see with my eyes, I would see bass chasing them. Sometimes I would see a bass so shallow his back would be out of the water, and you'd see like the wakes of the bass chasing, and sometimes I would see them, and so I just kind of knew that there was bass shallow, and I just kind of stuck into those areas, and in practice, I had pretty quickly found a bite shallow on the jerkbait, and was catching some pretty decent quality. I did kind of screw up on tournament morning. I'd found a pocket that I pulled into in practice, and it was just a very small pocket, and it was near one of the other areas I was fishing. And first I was in there for like maybe a minute or 2, and I caught a 20.5, and there was a ton of it looked really fishy in there, and so I left it alone. My plan was tournament morning to go pretty well started in that area, but there was like a shad spawn deal going on kind of on a more of a point that was a little ways away from there. So I was kind of like fishing that deal, and I was keeping my eyes open for any like bass boats that might come. And darn it, I got a little bit too far away from that pocket, and I saw a bass boat headed there, and I had my motor on high, and I was trying to beat them there, and they beat me in there by like 30 seconds. And so I was pretty bummed about that because I never even got to fish it. And then I kind of kept an eye, and they stayed in there pretty much 2 or 3 hours, like a good chunk of the morning. It wasn't a big area, and they just stayed in there. So I'm like, they're catching them in there, and so that really kind of got in my head, along with the fact that so I was catching those jerkbait fish so shallow that I would like pitch the jerkbait right up on the bank, and I was jerking the jerkbait rod up to like kind of keep it from like digging into the rock so much, and they were eating it in probably like a foot or two of water. And so when I was jerking it up, but then I get a bite and I set the hook kind of up, and they were so shallow, they just come shooting like a torpedo straight out of the water, and they were shaking. And I lost the first 3 fish, and they were like 16 to 17-inch fish. And so that was going on. I kept losing fish, and I literally didn't have a fish in the boat yet that I could count, and I lost 3 decent ones. And then that bass boat beat me into that pocket. So I was starting to like, I was feeling a little bit spun out right there in the first like 45 minutes. And I'm like, this is not a good start. But that since that boat went in that pocket and that shad spawn deal was starting to die, I cruised across to another bank that I've caught them in the past. And I barely even fished that bank in practice. Right off the bat, I caught a decent one. Then I caught another one. Then I caught another one. And next thing you know, I had like 4 fish in the boat, and I was, sitting in like second place or something. So that kind of like settled me down. And then it took me just a little bit. I finally got my 5th fish. And so anyway, that kind of settled me down. And then I could just start grinding and trying to upgrade, which I did upgrade at like, I think around 10, 15 or so. I caught a 19. And that put me up around 87 3/4, I think. And then I couldn't upgrade again after that. And I finally moved areas around 11:30 or 12. But the area I moved to, I had caught a couple decent ones in practice, and the bite had changed, and I was just catching little ones, and I had already kind of like committed now. I had moved, and it was too late to move back to where I was. So that just kind of finished the day for me. I did, though. I forgot to mention there was a key fish I caught. I caught all those fish shallow, but I was also doing something different in practice. I was dragging a Mojo rig, which is like a small Carolina rig with a little crocodile swamp bug. And I caught a couple decent fish in practice doing that, and those were out deeper, like maybe 10 or 15 foot deep. And I was dragging that out on a point, and I caught an 18 1/4 smallie, which was my second biggest fish. So that was kind of a key fish for me too.
So what's the difference between a Mojo rig and a Carolina rig?
Well, technically a Carolina rig has got, like a barrel weight or a bigger weight. And then a lot of times you'll put a bead or a clacker, and then you'll have a swivel, and then a leader, and then your hook. Well, those are typically, most of the time Carolina rigs, what you think of stereotypical one, it would have like a 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce weight. So it's a heavier weight, a longer leader. You got that swivel on there. So a Mojo rig is basically a finesse Carolina rig. And the way I do mine is I don't have a swivel. I put a rubber stopper, and I'm using like a 1/4 ounce tungsten bullet weight. And I put that rubber stopper on there and slide that up the line. And it just, usually I make maybe 12 or 16 inches of leader, but there's no actual swivel. Just your weight is pegged, and then you got your bait behind there. Typically, you're using a little bit lighter line. I was using 10 pound, so I'm throwing it on a bait caster with a 7-foot medium heavy rod, but I'm using 10 pound fluorocarbon. And, you can kind of see it in that picture. The weight is up there towards the top, and it's just I still like to throw it on a bait caster, but you can throw it on a spinning rod. But it's basically a finesse Carolina rig, and you're eliminating that swivel and all that. You've just got your weight pegged with your leader, and you typically you're throwing sometimes a little bit smaller weight. I like to throw that Crocagator zip worm. I'll throw it on there quite a bit. You can also throw the Punch Hog Junior, which is another good bait for like the Mojo rig or the Carolina big rig. And then those smallmouth just love those swamp bugs, so that's kind of why I was throwing that.
Jared, from Thursday and Friday, did your bite change much come Saturday?
The bite Thursday to Saturday was exactly the same. Same areas, same waypoints, and exact same baits, basically. Other than I put more fish in or caught more fish. I lost a lot of fish the first day using I won't even say the name, but a different Ned head. So I ended up having to go buy some different ones. I bought those on Friday before the tournament, but it was the same. Friday I went to a totally different area. There was no rock, no shelf rock like what I'd found where we were at on Saturday. So it was just a totally different bite. I fished more with a jig there. I fished a Mojo rig on a point and some top water. But I kind of let that storm scare me off. I got off the water before it was supposed to get there, and then it never did do nothing. So, and since I'm elderly, I had to go take a nap that afternoon. So I rested up for Saturday.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny.
Yeah, it's funny. We were camping right next to each other. I got back to the campground at like 3:00 on Friday, and Jared's truck was there and in his kayak and everything, but he wasn't there. So I figured he was inside asleep. But I rigged up all my rods and stuff. I don't know how long he slept, but I was there for like 2 to 3 hours, and he was asleep that whole time.
I was
It was
spying
kind
on
of hot
Chad's
too.
bait. I was spying on Chad's baits to see what he was making.
Yeah.
He thought I was napping.
Oh, that is funny. That is funny. Yeah, it kind of, the lake did set up differently. Like I was hoping it was a live scope deal and go fish out, for post spawners, schooling on Sat and whatnot, and that just wasn't going on. I ended up getting on the bank and catching them on a rock crawler. And I caught most of my fish on one bank. Like even on the docks, like they weren't set up on docks like they typically were. It was completely different. And I don't know if it was because of, and I don't know if it's because like the water clarity and like it was. I mean, overall, I feel like the lake was a lot dirtier than usual, and I don't know if that's playing a factor. Sure. I don't know if they were. And the other thing, I don't know if they were like still, possibly could be still spawning, because I think when I was there, I think the water was only 70 in the morning, maybe 72, 73 by the afternoon.
Yeah, I caught one good fish within the first 10 minutes of practice scoping, and then I just couldn't get them to commit to anything after that, and really didn't see that many suspended fish in practice doing it.
I think probably the biggest factor that kind of kept them from setting up like that is just there's been a lot of current in the lake, and they did have the floodgates open, but then I think while we were there right before we got there, they shut the floodgates off, but they kept generating though, and there was still a fair amount of current, and so that just keeps them from like suspending and like grouping up out deep and all that stuff. And plus there was a lot of bait shallow, there was still some spawn going on, there was still fry garters going on, and I just think there was, and like you said, the water was a bit dirtier because of everything being stirred up, and just a lot of things keeping them shallow and keeping them from setting up in that typical deep bite.
Yeah, there was a lot of bait up shallow, shore minnows or some kind of early fry maybe. But if you got in a stretch of bank with those flipping, up within 10 foot of the bank, you were going to catch fish pretty consistent down through there. Because I caught, I probably caught around 40 to 45 fish on Saturday. I think I culled 9 times on the board. And then once I got above 16 inches for my smallest, I probably caught another 8 or 9 fish. that wasn't big enough, in that 14 to 16 inch range. So there was a good bite up there shallow around all that action, but
Yep.
Hey, how did you catch your fish on Saturday?
Shaky head. Basically on a shaky head. And I had this was my best tournament. Again, I caught him a little bit deeper, right around that. To me, deep is 10 foot because I usually always stay on the bank. So I'm really trying to, I was looking at bass boats and just seeing these guys are always kind of off the bank, right? Casting at least 2. So I'm trying to get out in that little deeper range. And that's kind of where my better fish came. I will say, and I'm not taking, I had 2 16s in the bank and I lost a 20 and I probably lost an 18 and a half at the boat, which would have took me right at over 90. So, I had the winning fish, man, but that's fishing. But it felt good being able to actually get out there and actually catch some fish for once. So I lost that 20, or I say it was a 20. Everybody wants to say how big a fish is without having it in the boat. But I had it right there. And I would say it was a 19, 20 inch fish. And I think we can get pretty good at being able to say, hey, it was a big fish. And then I lost another really big fish, like really early. The first 2 fish I lost, and then I got an 18 and kind of settled in after that. But I guess to answer your question, it was a shaky head. Pretty much all day. I picked up a rod and didn't try anything else.
Now, Trey, you had some. Having 2 18s, 17. You're literally one good bite away. And where I was talking to guys at check-in, like last year when I won it, it was a bunch of 15s and 16s. And I had 1 22 inch, and that made my day.
Yeah.
So the fact that you guys are doing it with consistent fish, that goes a long way too.
And it was actually something Chad taught me. Chad's the one that really kind of put me on this. Is I knew I was losing fish, and I just stopped for a minute. And I was looking at my hook, and it was just really straight. It was just running really parallel to the bait. So I just took it and I just bent it out. And something Chad kind of always tells me, and he's told me before, just kind of bend that hook out a little bit. And I did that, and I didn't lose a fish after that. So, not trying to give up all your juice here, Chad, but
yeah, that's true though. Especially if you're throwing those the EWG style hooks. If you just like bend that hook point out just like 5 degrees, that's gonna increase your hookup percentages dramatically.
I will say the craziest thing about my entire day was, the last 45 minutes when I just needed a shift in mindset. And I wrote it in my post, but, I do this thing when I'm pond fishing. I'm like, Dawson's in the Bassmaster Classics. He's got 10 minutes. He needs 1 fish. Like I was literally like verbally saying this out loud. I'm sure if anybody was in earshot of me, they thought I was crazy. But I ended up catching a couple fish doing that, and that was super cool. But the coolest thing was I used 1 piece of plastic the entire day. I'm not going to say what or who or what, but 1 piece of plastic. I never changed it one time, and I caught probably over 25 fish on it. And it was just 1 piece of plastic the entire day, and that was pretty cool.
I'll show you another thing, Trey, on a shaky head like this is the crocodigator, and I don't use the EWG style on them. But when you get that where you're missing some, this screw lock that's in here, you can bend that down towards the shank of the hook, and that'll provide you a little more clearance too for your hook to penetrate through there too.
And
this is what I caught 2 of my biggest 3 off of, and it's the COG worm or the Big Easy. And I cut it about 2 inches off of it and made it about 6 or 6.5 inches, and then tipping the tail with chartreuse. And I had been throwing a different color shaky head and a different color Ned. And once I seen them little perch up there again, just like it was on Truman a few weeks ago with that chartreuse on them, I immediately changed both of them out to green pumpkin and green pumpkin blue, and then tipped that tail chartreuse and immediately started catching fish. That was within 45 minutes of fishing on Thursday when I noticed that, and it made a huge difference.
It's crazy how much people's color preferences will influence other people. I remember when I first started, I needed every color in the world, and I probably have it in there in my living room, like tequila, everything, dude. I needed everything: watermelon, green candy, purple candy, yellow cotton candy. And you guys will be proud of me. Like in my last 4 or 5 months, all my orders, Jared, you've really convinced me on that green pumpkin blue. Like all my stuff is green pumpkin blue, black and blue, plum, and black and just green pumpkin.
Yeah.
Them are really the 4 that I only use now, and just really having one for low light conditions and just high skies.
So for every lake in the state I've fished except for Table Rock, that's the only color plastic other than a red shad worm I throw on Truman and a 10-inch worm. That's the only color plastics I have in my whole garage.
What color 10-inch worm?
Red shad. And you better have some in a few weeks when you come to Truman.
Hey.
It's a good one. Yeah, but down there it seems like Margarita Mutilator is an awesome color, for a drop shot, for a Ned, for everything. And I couldn't get bit on it that first hour, so once I switched to this, it completely changed. But I'm a big non-color believer too. So I fish one color jig, and it's brown purple scale, and I throw a green pumpkin purple F-bomb trailer, and that's the only jig that I throw everywhere I go. And then on crankbaits, I throw one color crankbait in everything I throw, and it's silver, Normark or Rapala silver. It's the only crankbait color I throw. So it's pretty simple to grab a box and pull something out, and they're all the same color. So you either throw it or catch fish or you don't. So
that's awesome. That like relieves so much stress. I was talking to somebody the other day about winter, like fishing the winter series. Was that fun for you? I was like, the funnest part for fishing the winter series for me was the tackle preparation, right? Like I just 4 or 5 rods, these certain baits, and I could just go. Put me at Table Rock in May, and I've got 73 different things, and I threw one thing all day. Didn't even open my black pack. I was like, Trey, are you serious?
Yeah, I haven't been in my black pack the last 2 tournaments. I got 2 of the short stacks that I put on the front of mine, right behind my graphs. And one of them for down there had my swim baits in it, and the other one had my Neds in it and my shaky heads. So I never even touched my black pack the last 2 tournaments. Pretty nice.
That's a good feeling right there. No breaking off, no retying. Just
I did plenty of retying, but I had everything I needed right there in front of me. It made it nice.
Yeah. I bet you're stoked about All-American, Table Rock, and then we go back to Truman. And
no pressure.
No pressure. Even maybe you may have the trifecta. What are you thinking as far as next month on the 21st, going back to Truman? What do you think the lake's going to be like?
Well, we had some pretty crazy storms up here, tornadoes, like 5 of them just in the county I'm in, and then 2 more in Benton County. But we really got dumped on with rain. I mean, some areas were 2 to 2.5 inches right locally, not counting what Kansas got that'll eventually be here, in a few days' time. But they're calling for 5 to 7.5 inches in the next 3 to 4 days here through Monday. So this lake, it's going to jump back up again. There will be some fish in the bushes still, probably just because the shad get up in there. It's all just going to depend on how high it gets and how much water they can pull before then. We've still got almost a full month, I think, don't we, before then?
Yeah, we're really close.
Yeah, there's still going to be a crankbait bite, and there'll definitely be a timber bite by then for sure, too. If the water stays high, it'll take us locals out of our good stuff again, so all of our brush piles won't be in play again. So that'll help some people. But if you like to flip timber, it'll be that, and a crankbait bite will be really good by then, I think.
On the bright side, though, Jared, at least your brush piles, they're getting seasoned, right? Like they've stood out there now for a while.
Yeah. 2 years now. I mean, I've got to fish them in the big boats and big boat tournaments, but for the kayak events, I haven't got to fish any of it since I put out those. I think I got 28 or 29 that I put out after the All-American that I bombed in the second day. And I haven't got to fish any of them out of a kayak yet. The weather just keeps getting crazy on me. It'll happen one of these days, though.
Chad, what are you expecting for that Truman event? What are you thinking?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I like Truman. I've got a pretty good record there, so I kind of bombed the second day this year. But like Jared said, I mean, it's kind of unpredictable right now. I mean, they'll be post-spawn, And, like he said, flipping the trees is pretty well gets to be the deal. Once they hit that time of the year, the big worms and the brush hogs and crankbaits and all that kind of stuff. I don't have any idea. It kind of depends on what the water level is and how high up in the bushes it is and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like it's probably going to be a pretty good tournament as far as we ought to be catching fish, but unless it just gets stupid high or something.
Yeah. Another bite that'll play too is that Mojo rig and Carolina rig. If they're still pulling water across them points, it can be really good in June and July if they're pulling water.
What do you guys think? You think we'll have another 100.5 inches like we did in 2020 with Tim Harding? Looks like we're I think that year is on June 27th. He caught 100.5 inches on Truman.
It's got the potential to do it. My guess would be around 95 inches for the typical summertime bite. If we get 80 anglers in it, somebody's going to catch over 90 for sure, I think. But that the All-American in the first week of May, if we'd ever hit it at normal water, it would take 200 inches to win that tournament. I'd almost guarantee it. Maybe 205, 206.
Damn.
Yeah, all the reports, 2 weeks out from the All-American were like, oh, they're eating. There's some big bags caught. There was good fish caught, and then all that changed real quick.
The week before the rain, the weekend before the rain, my cousin had over 22.5 pounds in a big boat tournament, fishing about a 3-mile stretch that is on the upper end where I normally fish. So it's got the potential. And the year before, me and JB Gray, we had 20.94 in a big boat tournament the week before all the rain that time. So, and them are 100-inch bags right there. So it's got the potential for sure. But it does in the summertime too, to do it too. And you can do it in a hurry. You can pull it on one flat full of timber and you can catch 18, 19 pounds in 20 minutes. So.
Yeah, it could be a good event. Should be nice and warm by then. And of course, the nice part about Truman is it never gets too crazy busy with pleasure boaters, especially back in those creeks with all the standing timber and all that. So it'll be interesting to see what the weather does between now and then.
Yeah.
Hey, Jared, I heard that some of the campgrounds got hit with those tornadoes. Did it shut down some of the campgrounds or?
It did. I mean, I think most of it was because of power and then blocking the roadways. I mean, it was Long Shoal took a direct hit. State Park got hit pretty good. Along the highway, like Uncle Gabby's cabins and all those RV parks for the next 4 or 5 miles down towards Warsaw from there was pretty much a direct hit. Tore up lots of campers, lots of homes. But like Long Shoal, it disconnected it from the cables enough that it broke the gas lines underneath of it. So it's completely shut down and will be, probably for a couple weeks before they get it going. I think the state park was going to try to get theirs back open by Friday, to get people in there because it was more tree damage there than anything. Yeah. So, but I think my guess is the campground at Little Tebow is probably a mess too. It took a pretty good shot over in that little stretch too. So, but I think by tournament time, everything will be back open again by then.
But they're scrambling for Memorial Day weekend.
I know, I hate it because it's their third biggest, all the marinas and campgrounds, that's their third biggest holiday of the year, weekend of the year. And it's going to get all jacked up this year for some of them anyway.
Yeah, I was watching the Storms the other night. Go ahead, Trey.
I was going to say, speaking of that, our tournament, sponsors coming out, Mimosa Place, where we're going to have the awards at and everything. So if you guys are looking for a place to hook up and get your RV in or whatever, make sure to check out Mimosa Place. We'll talk more about that on the preview, but we'll have Rick Rowden on here. We also have another really special guest, an absolute Truman Hammer, coming on as a guest at the preview before. So you guys need to stay tuned for that.
take all the info we can get for trimming.
We could probably just get it all from you. And that's what I want to say, man. Honestly, just speaking about both of you guys, both of your characters. And I know that, I get the opportunity to live next to Chad, and I try to pick his brain as much as I can. And he's always been really good with me when it comes to information. He's pretty tight to the vest and won't tell you everything. I feel like he believes that you need to earn it. And it's kind of about like just time on the water. But I would say, with you, Jared, I mean, from day one, and I've told you this, and sometimes I just ask myself, why would he tell me these things? And when I was still really new to this and really don't know what to do, but dude, you would literally like tell me like everything about the lake. Like you wouldn't hold anything back. Like I'm sure there's maybe there's stuff that you've earned on that lake that's yours, but dude, you have always been, I mean, as far as showing me things, pointing me in the right direction of baits. Like, dude, you have been just so friendly when it comes to just being so transparent on how you fish, what you do, and what someone should do. And I would just want you to know that is so appreciated, dude.
Yeah, and I've always tried to help people out. I had a lot of friends back when I was crappie fishing, all over the Midwest or whatever, that would come down here to Truman, and like when gas would get high, it cost them $100 to $125 to come down and fun fish for a day. So if I could give somebody one little tip or one little area, I mean, it's not my tournament stuff that I'm giving away, but I can still lead them in the right direction and make them have a good day, not just be out $125 and be bummed when they get home for not catching any fish, So it's kind of the same way bass fishing. I fish so much different. I could put the same 3 rods, same 3 baits into anybody else's kayak and tell them what stretch to fish, and they probably wouldn't catch fish like I do. But they could go do something totally different and catch those fish. It's kind of confidence in what you're doing. And that's right back to the colors that I use. I got confidence, 35 years of fishing Truman, fishing certain colors. I've kind of got confidence in it. So they're either going to eat it or they ain't, and move places and make them eat it somewhere else,
No, seriously, really appreciate you guys being, a part of Moyak and all that. Because you guys, like Craig said, you guys have been, fairly open with everything and helpful. And that's
well, it is the same way with you, Jonathan, with all your help you give everybody with the kayaks and stuff, and it helps you just like it helps me at the store, drive people to the store. I got guys that'll stop every trip coming through. Hey, where they biting at, and they'll buy something. So it helps us too, I guess, but it's just part of being nice. That's how you get them customers back in there too,
Yep.
I'll help you.
Hey,
I can do that part. You guys got a dog problem or a dog question? I'll trade it for fishing lessons.
Because
So,
it don't go unnoticed, when guys do that, helping somebody out like that, or like Jonathan's all the time, getting parts, fixing kayaks. I did some of it at the All American. Diana Dobbs had new equipment to put on hers and had nothing wired. So you go out the back and you help them. It's just part of it.
So I there's along the lines of information, and this is something that Trey and I have talked about a couple times outside the podcast and stuff. So you guys have these local experts and stuff come on the podcast, and they're sharing information, they're sharing conditions, which is all great. But a lot of times and I'm curious what everybody thinks about this, because maybe other people feel differently than I do. But when they come out and they start talking about specific areas and specific boat ramps, I think that sometimes that's not fair to people that already were planning on, like, maybe that's their spot that they like to fish and there's normally not that many people there. And then all of a sudden this guide says, hey, I would put in at this ramp. And now all of a sudden you've got 15 people at this ramp that wouldn't normally be there. So sometimes it kind of blows up people's spots. And I'm saying this, it's never actually affected me, but every time that happens, I'm like, man, somebody's spot just got blown up. So I was just kind of curious. And sometimes I know it's out of the control of you guys because you're not necessarily telling them, you're not asking them to say that, and they just kind of blurt that stuff out. But in my opinion, sometimes maybe they ought to not talk about specific areas, or maybe just general areas of the lake, but not like this boat ramp,
And that's something we can address too, like before the show when they're coming on. We could just be like, hey, we're not going to pinpoint exact locations because really, I think our overall, I know my overall objective for it is just I really want to give a lake breakdown, like upper end, lower end, middle end, how that changes during the season. But I do agree, Chad. Like I don't like not saying, hey, you should put in at gold star ramp and fish. Yeah. So staying away from specifics.
That's the way the last guys were before Table Rock. They had me wanting to go fish at the dam. And they gave some great information on all areas of the lake, but then he's like, I'd put in right here and I'd do this. So I wonder how many people actually went to the dam and fished down there. I was wanting to go. That was my whole pre-fishing.
JD,
that was my whole thought too. I was like, I want to go to the dam. I went there Monday and I caught fish there, and I was like, I'm gonna go back to the dam. And then he said that, and I'm like, I guess I'm not going to the dam. Like I don't know, but again, I think we talked about like all this stuff, like what someone likes to throw and whatnot too. But like at the same time, at the end of the day, and this is something I've learned over the doing this not very long compared to you guys, like. I've got to go where I'm confident, and I've got to throw the baits that I'm confident with, and I've got to do my game plan. Because as soon as you get outside of that, like it doesn't work. You freak out. You start running. You run out of battery. You run out of juice. You're just frustrated. So like I think the goal, and I think what we want to do is be able to give the average Joe that maybe it's his first tournament, he's not going to get time to pre-fish. Maybe give him a little bit of information. The cool thing is the
good one too.
Correct, like that's huge. Like we're not going to get like, I don't think we're always going to get specifics and whatnot, and we'll talk to guys about that, saying, hey, just tell us what you think. But like it was funny because the conservation agent, he goes, I like throwing a shaky head, and then sure enough, Jared catches him on a shaky head and then net. So it's like
got him on a shaky head.
This one's always tied on right here. You ain't gonna worry about me not having that bait tied on anywhere I go. Especially
but no, I think that like we all talk about, like guys that are getting into this, learning trade, newer guys, whoever, like do what you're confident in, do what you feel comfortable with. Is that if that means throwing a jackhammer in 50-degree water, like do you, man, do whatever you're gonna feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Like if that's a DT10 on the back of a Carolina rig and you catch fish that way, do it. So I think that's the goal here, is just get people talking about kayaking, getting them excited about the events, and just bringing them all out. So no, I totally get it and I agree. Like that was my first thought, of like, oh, everybody's gonna be at the dam. I probably shouldn't go to the dam.
Had me wanting to go.
Oh man. Well, guys, you guys got anything else before we get out of here?
Not really.
I am good.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it a bunch of times, but yeah, huge thank you to the Bowmans and Performance Food Services and all those people that helped out. That was a fantastic meal at the awards. They went above and beyond. That was really cool. And for sponsoring the event, I thought the hourly payouts that was pretty cool. I was bummed because I had a couple fish that I thought might have got one and I didn't get any, but it still was cool. And it spreads the money out and gives other people you may not have finished in the top places a chance to win some money. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there was several that cashed the $200 that didn't get in on the top 8 or whatever it was that paid too. So that was kind of cool deal doing that.
You did have that big fish, Chad. You just caught it a couple minutes late.
The wrong time.
It was at the wrong time. It was, so that's the way it goes.
And now it changed too, because you could manipulate that a little bit in the past, because you could wait till when you submit it and look at the leaderboard if you had service. But now it's like, I think it's a good thing, bad thing. Hopefully nobody does it and is like, well, I'm gonna wait till the next hour and hold on to this fish. Hopefully that doesn't happen or anything like that.
Yeah, but, it's hard to tell. Once you're into the tournament after the first hour, it's hard to tell. Anyway,
it is.
Like my 18 3/4. That picture was taken at like 2 minutes till the next hour, And I chuck it back and I look, I'm like, hell, that thing could have, if I'd have waited a couple of minutes, which it wouldn't have won either one, but you start thinking about it that way, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that we don't have to try to strategize. I don't even have to think about it because I did do that. I did that a lot of times. I would sit there and it's like 5 minutes before the end of the hour, I'd get on the website and scroll down the leaderboard and see what the big bass was and then see if I wanted to submit mine or not. And so that was like always in the back of my head. If I had a good one, I was holding on to it. Now I don't got to worry about it. It's just, it is what it is. And you just go fishing.
Yeah.
Great, man. You got anything else before we get out of here, dude?
No, man, it's just cool being on here with these two dudes. Feels good to. I mean, I've never been on a podcast with two winners before.
You were on a podcast last month with two winners.
Okay.
No offense to Jared and Chad. We
didn't do it last month.
Oh, shoot.
I'm trying to get some more juice from Jared.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some more juice from Jared. Shut up.
Oh my God.
You guys literally have the winners on every month.
I'm just.
Oh, anyways. All right. Well, guys, seriously, congrats on your guys' win. Appreciate you guys coming on here. We'll talk about Truman here in a couple weeks. Hopefully it's not flooded to the moon and whatnot, but it's gonna be a good event. But seriously, congrats, guys.
Thanks a bunch.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Later, guys.
Have a good night.